So if you're new to Deciphered, what we're doing is, every Friday, we're getting together, 11 o'clock. I'm going to be sharing our little piece, some poetry, with you all. And then I'm going to break down the poem. And after I do that, usually I'm doing two pieces, but today I got a special guest. I know Sharon was there, so in a little bit I'm going to ask her to join like we did last time. She's going to get in and do her thing. And, before she does her thing, as we test out this whole connection thing, we're going to just make sure that you can hear her as well. And then she's going to do her thing as well. So she'll be joining us shortly. For those of you all who want to hear Shaumba, who are on the Facebook, join us over on the Instagram side of things, because that's where she's going to be joining us. If not, you'll be able to get the first piece that I'm going to do with you all today. And so we are in Deji's studio. She's not charging me a lot to use it today. I really appreciate it. And so the poem that I'm going to share, is from the book, from the Limbs of My Poetry. And of course, you can get that where? At UpstanderInternational.com. So I see Musal joining us on the Facebook. So I want to remind you, Musal, and anyone else joining on the Facebook, when Shaumba comes on, you're only going to hear her on the Instagram. So you want to go over to the Instagram and follow me there when it's time to do that, all right? So I'm going to kick off my first poem. If y'all are not hearing stuff or anything, of course, you can let me know. And, we're just going to keep it flowing from there, all right? So I appreciate you all joining us today. And I had a poem that I wanted to do. I really had this poem that I wanted to do. But I think that I'm going to do a different one, okay? If that's all right with y'all. All right? So I think that this one that I'm going to do, it's called What Does Development Aid Really Mean? What does development aid really mean? Now, for those of y'all who are familiar with this poem, on my album Signs of the Time, you can get them at Amazon and all these other places, and iTunes and all of those other spots. This poem is actually read by Kendra on the CD. So, she did a lot of work in the international development industry. And, appreciate y'all joining. I see you, Latoya. What's going on? I see you. Who's that? Jamisha's in the building. Jamicia, Miss Hoya, what's popping? I hope you're doing well. So we're gonna do that. Yes, Stacey's getting it in. So both Kendra and I worked in the international development field for a while, and we started to get a little bit disheartened by it. And so this poem I wrote, called What Does Development Aid Really Mean, was kind of how both of us were really feeling at the time. And then I'm going to start to break it down. Then we'll get Shaumba in, because I know that's what y'all really here for. It's all good. I'm just kind of biding time and everything. So check it out. What does development aid really mean? Does it mean getting money to mobilize against HIV, or driving through southern Sudan in an SUV? Does it mean the improvement of life, since many joined the development enterprise to improve their lifestyle? Does it mean giving 0.1% of your GNP and having 1/3 of that funnel its way to those in need, since most of the aid goes to pay aid agency staff salary? What does it mean? You see, development aid is well-intentioned, but in this new millennium, we have to learn our lesson, because I'd rather have no aid than slow aid or low aid if it means that a government will give money for pipelines and pesticides, but indirectly support a genocide. Or have you forgotten the extreme case of Rwanda, where 80% of the development aid went to the pre-genocidal government, even though all of the signs of the genocide were already in place? But agencies for aid paid it no mind as long as that fertilizer for every became floatable, or that water for every became potable, or that minimum rise in literacy became notable, just noticeable enough to give more uplifting, quotable statistics on report backs to donors. Please, misguided top-down development enforces the politics of collusion, because in exclusion with repressive governments, the poorest of the poor never receive assistance. It feels like subsistence farming, and it's quite alarming, because aid agencies never realize their agency in societal conflicts, because they claim to take an apolitical approach, but they fail to see how misdirected top-down aid can encroach on a politically fragmented society and exacerbate it by further disempowering the disempowered, primarily by working with government-appointed elites. So we have to rethink development, because many of us don't understand what to develop meant in the first place. You see, I'm even calling for a structural adjustment program of structural adjustment programs and other policies that claim or claimed to assist developing homelands. Because development aid doesn't mean that we can have true African growth and opportunity when the resources we use don't come from our own community. And aid doesn't mean fancy dinners and classy hotels with money given to decrease mortality rates for newborn children. And if aid can't be given to a government without a care for ensuring the rights of every child, woman, and man, then I'll be damned before I say that everything is okay with development aid. It's time to ensure that our dollars are being spent on education and public health, as opposed to safari vacations and private wealth for foreign experts and host government hierarchies. And if we can have vouchers at home, why not have developing country vouchers so good governments can choose the best development projects for their land, instead of generic plans from those claiming to know what's best for the world's destitute. Development aid, it can't be looked at as a Wall Street business transaction where investors are only worried about the comeback. We need to come back and revise our strategy, because we'll all be glad to see the day when development aid is not only concerned with promising statistics on cocoa revenues, crop distribution, and more village midwives, because few lives will be improved or saved unless the poorest of the poor truly receive the majority of the aid. So until the day when underdevelopment development dreams are redeveloped for developing countries, development aid will never appear to be what it seems. And if we continue to turn a blind eye and a deaf ear to this preventable predicament, then the poorest of the world's poor will continue to ask, just what does development aid really mean? That is what does development aid really mean. For those of y'all who've had experience overseas during an expat life or living in that development world, y'all know exactly what I'm talking about. Y'all seen a lot of this. Y'all have experienced a lot of this firsthand. Appreciate that. I'm glad y'all are feeling that. Now I want to break it down a little bit so we can get to line by line, so we can understand where I was going for with some of the things that I was saying here. And then we're going to have Shaumba, who's going to jump in and do her thing as well. So let me break down what some of this stuff was talking about in the beginning. So when I say, what does development aid really mean? Does it mean giving money to mobilize against HIV or driving through southern Sudan in an SUV? I was talking about the fact that many of us became really disenfranchised doing this work in the development fields because we felt that a lot of the money that was being given, that was being out there. Oh, hey, what's up, Yango? How you doing? You want to say hi to the people? You want to come over? Come on, come over.
No, I'm just looking at the phone.
Oh, you're just looking at the phone? All right, that's cool. But if you want to come over and say hi, you got to step in and let the people know that you're here. Is that cool? All right, that's cool. So, you know, who knows? Yango might get in and spit a little bit. You never know. He's 5 years old. He got bars. Y'all, wait. Ah, there he is. There he is. Hey, what's up? What's up? You can't see him on Facebook, but, you know. You good? You good? All right, come out to the side. Come out to the side. So check it out. So again, like I said, he might just hop in. He's got skills. Y'all know. Trust me. Trust me. So check it out. Or driving through southern Sudan in an SUV. A lot of us who do this development work, we got very frustrated because we felt that a lot of the money that was going out to the aid was really just going to pay people's salaries. And, you know, a lot of us were very frustrated by that because we weren't feeling that the money was going to the people who needed it the most. And a lot of people who were going overseas, when I said, does it mean the improvement of life since many joined the development enterprise to improve their lifestyle? And what I meant by that is that some people were living like rock stars overseas because they couldn't live a particular way in their home countries. And that was very problematic for many of us because we were feeling that, you know, they weren't getting what they needed, the people on the ground. And that was very problematic for many of us. And so people were joining to improve their lifestyles, and that was a real problem for us. Yanga, do me a favor, take it downstairs, okay? So from there, when I say what does it mean? So when I say does it mean giving 1/10 of 1% of your GNP and having 1/3 of that funded its way to those in need, since most of the aid goes to pay aid agency staff salary, what does it mean? Because the majority of the percentage of the money that's being given is not going to the people who need it the most, and that's what we're talking about. So the question again becomes, what does it mean? And so I say that, oh yeah, that's fine. Put it back on, Daisy. That's cool. And so when I say development aid is well-intentioned, but in this new millennium, we have to learn our lesson. I believe that most people who get involved in the work in the development aid field do believe that they're doing the best work. Put that down. Do believe that they're doing the best work, but unfortunately, they feel like, you know, we get caught up in a lot of the office politics. We get caught up in a lot of the other things that are really preventing us from being able to do our best work. And that becomes, you know, very problematic for us, right? So when we say, what does it mean? We know that it's well-intentioned, but we have to learn our lessons. So I'd say I'd rather have no aid than slow aid or low aid if it means that a government will give money for pipelines and pesticides, but indirectly support a genocide. Oh, it's cool. You can go through. It's all good. No worries, guys. No worries. And we at home. We do our thing. It's a live show, and it's all good. That's how we work. That's how we work, right? So when I say that I'd rather have no aid than slow aid or low aid, if it means that a government will give money for pipelines and pesticides, but indirectly support a genocide. You see, when some of these governments are corrupt, a lot of these governments are taking the funds and are using them for their own means, and the money's not really being used to support the people. And that's why it becomes a real problem for many of us who do this work. But a lot of these agencies, I say they paid it no mind as long as that well water became potable, or that fertilizer ferry became floatable, or that minimal rise in literacy became notable, just noticeable enough to give uplifting, quotable statistics on report back to donors. I'm talking about how some people who are involved in this work don't really care about what happens on the ground as long as the reports can look good. And that, again, the people on the ground don't get the assistance that they fully need. And these are reasons why, you know, Kendra and I ultimately left that field. Misguided top-down development enforces the politics of exclusion because in collusion with repressive governments, many of us feel like if you're going to give money to these governments and not care what they do with it, you might as well be joining them in being part of the oppressive system that they're creating. When we talk about it, the poorest of the poor never receive assistance and feels like subsistence farming. And it's quite alarming because aid agencies never realize their agency in societal conflicts because they claim to take an apolitical approach. And a lot of this was inspired by a class I took at the Fletcher School, or I believe it was called Aiding Genocide, and it was based off of a book by Peter Uven, who talks a lot about this. And so when we say that they fail to see how misguided top-down development can encroach on politically fragmented societies, they can exacerbate the situation by giving this money and having it go to particular groups, and it just gets eaten up. So I say we have to rethink development because many of us don't understand what to develop meant in the first place, because this approach ain't working. So what I'm talking about, I'm calling for a structural adjustment program of structural adjustment programs. Many people remember the structural adjustment programs of past years and how people felt like these were going to help people get their act together, but it really didn't work on many levels. And that's why a lot of us were just saying we need to cancel that debt. And when I say, and if aid can't be given to a government without care for ensuring the rights of child, woman, and man, then I'll be damned before I say that everything is okay with development aid. We have to have standards. We have standards here when organizations and nonprofits get their money, get their funds, and get that given to an organization. So why not have standards for people overseas, right? We need to have those standards. And so as I move towards the end, I say like development aid can't be looked at as a Wall Street transaction. We need to, so I say until the day, I said this kind of fast, so I'm going to rewind and come back to it. I say, just moving down towards the end. So until the day when underdeveloped development dreams are redeveloped for developing countries, I just like to play on words. I just like to keep hitting the wordplay. Y'all know that's kind of like my thing. Development aid will never appear to be what it seems. And if we continue to turn a blind eye or a deaf ear to this preventable predicament, then the poorest of the world's poor will continue to ask, what does development aid really mean? So that's the poem. What does development aid really mean? If you have the CD Signs of the Time, you know that it's read by Kendra. You can download it right now. You can go to iTunes and type in Omekongo and what does development aid really mean. Seeing some other folks who are in the building. Kachuri, I see you. Oh, Bespoke Boston 1 join. I see that. What's up? I'm seeing y'all on Facebook as well.